Okay, folks, buckle in, because what you're about to hear is going to shake how you look at Claressa Shields, her camp, her whole so-called biggest summer event, and the man walking around with another woman's name still inked on his arm. This isn't a small story anymore. This is a full-blown implosion happening in slow motion, on camera, on Instagram, in comment sections, and in sponsorship decks, and somehow, 1 month out from what she called the biggest fight of her career, Claressa Shields is spending more time trading insults with strangers online than she is drilling combinations in the gym. Let me say that again, because it deserves to land. 1 month. 30 days. And instead of Claressa Shields locking the door of the gym and disappearing until fight night, she's out here calling supporters, lunch ladies, calling critics, losers, and, I kid you not, asking corporations to please sponsor her fight week. In the same breath. On the same platform. On the same day. Now hold that thought, because the second you start looking at what's actually going on, the story stops being about one Instagram exchange and starts being about a career, a brand, and a business empire that a lot of very serious people believe is quietly cracking in real time. And the paper trail is public. Every receipt I'm about to walk you through, you can pull up on your own phone. That's what makes this whole situation so wild. Nobody had to leak anything. Claressa Shields posted it. Her team posted it. The promo materials posted it. All I'm doing is connecting dots that were left in plain sight. Here's the setup. Claressa Shields is scheduled to headline an event on August 15th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta against Lonnie Daniel Scott. That fight, at one point, was being sold to the public as the biggest event of the summer, drawing more than 20,000 fans, with limited premium sponsorship opportunities available for anyone lucky enough to get in on the ground floor. Big words. Big promises. Big attendance number. Big everything. And then, quietly, the language started shifting. The 20,000 became 18,000. The biggest event of the summer softened into one of the biggest events of the summer. The sponsorship opportunities got more aggressive, more public, more urgent. And meanwhile, Claressa Shields was on the timeline going toe-to-toe with anonymous accounts over her boyfriend's inbox. On the harshest read, this is an athlete in freefall. On the kindest read, this is a champion whose team has completely lost the plot. Either way, folks, this doesn't look good. And the fight hasn't even happened yet. Let me back up, because if you're just walking into this conversation, it's easy to think, alright, this is just another Claressa Shields social media flare-up. It absolutely is not. This is about how one athlete's public choices, who she signed with, who she dated, who she argued with, and who she alienated, may be catching up to her all at once, in the worst possible window, right before the fight that was supposed to prove she is the face of women's boxing. Now, listen up, because it is important that we start with respect. Claressa Shields has an accomplishment ledger that most fighters could only dream about. 2-time Olympic gold medalist. One of the most decorated amateurs in the history of American boxing. Turned professional in 2016 and stacked belts across weight classes without a loss. Built a brand around the letters GWOAT. And for a moment there, folks, it genuinely looked like Claressa Shields was going to be the first female fighter to break into that top-tier corporate endorsement stratosphere. Mainstream money. Global campaigns. The whole thing. But something happened along the way. The momentum stalled. And while Claressa Shields kept winning inside the ring, other fighters she used to be mentioned above, started passing her on the marketing side. Katie Taylor. Amanda Serrano. Alicia Baumgardner. Michaela Mayer. Chantel Cameron. Names that used to trail Claressa in the pecking order started headlining pay-per-views, landing streaming deals, and locking in the kinds of sponsorships that quietly build generational wealth. And the whispers started. Whispers about brand safety. Whispers about drama. Whispers about a fighter with a resume so heavy it should be untouchable, and a public persona that keeps making corporate decision-makers reach for the delete button. Then there is the Papoose situation, which is its own separate mess entirely. Because Papoose, the 50-year-old rapper, is still legally married to Remy Ma. Still has her name tattooed on his arm. Still posts pictures with her. Still shows up in her posts. And yet somehow the story that keeps getting told is that Claressa Shields is the one whose relationship is being disrespected. This past week, Claressa Shields decided to reshare a post from a woman with an 810 area code, that's Flint, Michigan, going off on women who slide into the DMs of men who are already in relationships. And Claressa Shields amplified it, adding her own outrage, saying the messages women were sending Papoose were diabolical, saying she blocks them, saying the whole thing is yuck. Hit pause on that, because the irony is loud. This is the same relationship that critics have been pointing at for a couple of years now, and the same relationship where the origin story itself, how Claressa Shields and Papoose came to be, has been the subject of exactly the kind of accusation she is now firing back at other women for. You do not have to be a private investigator to see the parallel. Claressa Shields did not need one either. She had to know. And she posted anyway. Now here's where the timing gets almost impossible to explain away. On the same day she was defending Papoose's inbox, on the same day she was calling supporters lunch ladies, on the same day she was warning a woman named Turner Waters that she would blaze her, Claressa Shields was also publicly circulating a sponsorship package for the upcoming fight. Let me repeat that. She was fighting fans and hunting sponsors in the same feed, in the same hour. In what universe does that look like a champion locked into a training camp? Serious question. In what universe? Let's break down that sponsorship package, because this is where a lot of people inside the boxing industry started raising their eyebrows. The graphic Claressa Shields put out announced a limited number of premium partnership opportunities. Fight night uniform patches. Fight week event branding. Workout apparel placement. VIP meet and greets. Social media promotion. And a phrase that, on the harshest read, is doing a lot of hiding, quote, tailored brand integrations. Now, what does that mean, exactly? Because in the corporate sponsorship world, that phrase either means everything or it means nothing at all. It is the kind of soft language you deploy when you have not actually built the tier packages yet and you are hoping somebody with a checkbook fills in the blanks for you. And that is not me being cynical. That is me reading the deck the way any brand executive would read it. Second problem with that deck. When observers looked at the promotional graphic and counted the visible sponsor placements on the front and back of the outfit, the patch spots, the panel spots, the strip spots, they counted somewhere between 8 and 12 open slots. 8 to 12. For an event Claressa Shields is publicly describing as having limited availability. Folks, if a real estate agent tells you there are only 2 units left in the building and you walk in and there are 10 empty apartments, what would you assume? Exactly. You would assume the demand is not matching the marketing. And the paper trail on this fight is walking straight into that same trap. Third problem, and this one is the one that has industry people whispering the loudest. Timing. In professional boxing, sponsorship deals are almost always locked in months before fight week. The final 30-day window is for activation. For promotion. For commercials. For rollout. For the sponsors you already have to be seen leaning in. It is not the window for cold outreach. Cold outreach 30 days out is a red flag. Cold outreach 30 days out, in a public Instagram post, from the fighter herself, with a call to action for corporations to contact her team, that is a 5-alarm red flag. And you cannot spin it any other way. Anybody who has ever worked in sports marketing is looking at that timeline and quietly wincing. Fourth problem. The sponsorship deck promises exposure across the entire fight week, but the outfit displaying those sponsor patches appears to be the fight night walkout uniform specifically. So a brand paying for fight week visibility is expected to trust that its logo will show up somewhere across 7 days of programming, when the only image they have been shown is a single night walkout kit. On the kindest read, that is a marketing oversight. On the harshest read, that is a company being asked to buy air. Now let's pull the lens back, because none of it, is happening in a vacuum. The exact same week Claressa Shields is scrambling for Fight Week partners, another major boxing event is heating up on the calendar. Rolly Romero and Teofimo Lopez are headlining a card just 1 week after August 15th. That card has heat. It has narrative. It has social clout. And it has the kind of built-in cross-promotion that swallows attention from smaller events on the same calendar block. And every time Claressa Shields loses another news cycle to her own comment section, that Rolly Romero and Teofimo Lopez card gains a little more oxygen. That is not conspiracy. That is calendar math. And it is a problem Claressa Shields does not seem willing to solve. Back to the tape. Here's another beat that a lot of people missed. Remember when Claressa Shields chose to sign with Win Records instead of aligning herself with MVP Promotions? At the time, that was framed as a bold, independence-driven move. Claressa Shields did not need MVP. Did not need Nakisa Bidarian. Did not need Jake Paul. Did not need the whole ecosystem. Fast forward to today, and look at what MVP-adjacent fighters have accomplished. Amanda Serrano built a global profile with her Katie Taylor trilogy, landed Netflix placement, earned reported career-high purses, and became a face of women's boxing on a scale that used to be reserved for men. Michaela Mayer kept climbing through championship-tier main events. Alicia Baumgardner kept expanding endorsement rotations. That ecosystem lifted its fighters. And Claressa Shields, who spent years insisting she did not need any of it, is now the one publicly asking corporations to please stop by her DMs. I do not say that to be cruel. I say that because it is the exact contrast every sponsorship decision maker is drawing right now, and Claressa Shields is on the wrong side of that contrast. And it is not because of her boxing. Nobody with a brain is questioning her boxing. It is because the modern sports endorsement game is not just about who wins the fight. It is about who wins the week, wins the month, wins the news cycle. Amanda Serrano wins those cycles by fighting and shutting up between fights. Alicia Baumgardner wins those cycles by staying visible without staying combative. Katie Taylor wins those cycles by carrying herself like a monument to the sport. And Claressa Shields, right now, is winning nothing but comment section rounds against strangers named Nicole and Turner Waters and a critic she decided to call a lunch lady. Now, before somebody types it in the comments, yes, I hear the pushback. I hear the argument that Claressa Shields gets treated more harshly than her peers because she is a black woman in a sport that historically has not protected black women. That deserves to be said out loud, and it deserves to be taken seriously. And on the kindest read, there is truth in it. Boxing has never been fair to black women. Media coverage has never been fair to black women. Sponsor decisions have never been fair to black women. All of that is real. But the specific version of that argument that Claressa Shields' most vocal supporters keep making, the argument that any criticism of her is automatically an attack on black women, starts to run into a problem. Because the record shows Claressa Shields, over the last several years, in public disputes with her own sister. With Layla Ali. With Alicia Baumgardner. With Shadasia Green. With Terry Harper adjacent conversations. With a woman named Turner Waters who literally tried to defend her. With ordinary fans who quoted her back to herself. On the kindest read, that is a champion under pressure. On the harshest read, that is a pattern. And this is where the story shifts from Instagram to industry. Because sponsors do not care about your fight IQ. They care about brand safety. That is the phrase that quietly runs every seven-figure endorsement decision in professional sports. Before a Fortune 500 corporation greenlights an ambassador deal, an internal team runs an evaluation. Legal reviews the paperwork. Marketing reviews the audience. Public relations reviews the last 12 months of headlines. Social listens for viral incidents. And then somebody in the room asks the only question that actually matters: is this athlete more likely to make our brand look good, or is this athlete more likely to trend for the wrong reason on a Tuesday? That is the meeting. That is the room where sponsorship decisions live or die. And if you are Claressa Shields walking into that room in 2026, the last 12 months of trending moments are not the reel you want playing. Here's the second uncomfortable truth. Brands do not evaluate athletes in isolation. They evaluate them against a bench of alternatives. So Claressa Shields is not just being weighed against her own record, she is being placed side by side, on the same PowerPoint slide, next to Amanda Serrano, next to Katie Taylor, next to Alicia Baumgardner, next to Michaela Mayer, next to Chantel Cameron. And in that comparison, the question the executive is asking is not who is the best fighter. The question is who represents the lowest business risk with the highest positive headline probability. That's the math. It is unromantic. It is a spreadsheet. And it is unforgiving. Now compare the sponsors Claressa Shields has actually landed in this cycle. Win Records. A snack brand whose founder unfortunately passed away. Reports of a heart-shaped patch tied to Papoose getting placement alongside commercial branding. On previous cards, Zeus Network showed up prominently, and Zeus Network, whatever you think of it, lives in the reality television controversy category, not the Fortune 500 family-friendly category. That is a very specific tier of partner. And on the kindest red, it reflects a fighter serving a specific audience. On the harshest red, it reflects a fighter whose corporate ceiling has been quietly capped, and who is now working the tier of partners that is willing to tolerate the noise. Neither red is flattering. And both reads land in the same conclusion: the mainstream endorsement lane is not opening for Claressa Shields the way it once was. Here is where the story goes even deeper. Women's boxing right now is in a consolidation moment. Sponsor dollars are not spreading out. They are concentrating. Corporations are picking 1, 2, maybe 3 anchor athletes to build long-term campaigns around, and everyone else is fighting for scraps. Katie Taylor is one of those anchors. Amanda Serrano is one of those anchors. And after that, the shortlist is exactly the fighters Claressa Shields has publicly clashed with. Alicia Baumgardner. Michaela Mayer. Chantel Cameron. That's the shortlist. That is the room she needed to be in. And several years ago, based on her Olympic and amateur resume, she should have been at the top of that shortlist. Instead, on the harshest red, she is the cautionary tale being circulated as an example of what happens when you win in the ring and lose the room outside of it. Hold that thought, because now we get to the part that I think matters most. All of this, the sponsorship deck, the attendance walkback, the Papoose defense, the lunch lady insults, the Turner Waters exchange, the 18,000 versus 20,000 shift, the one of the biggest language, all of it, on the harshest red, points at one uncomfortable possibility. That Claressa Shields is not fighting Lonnie Daniel Scott on August 15th. She is fighting a slow-motion brand contraction. And every online argument she engages in is one more distraction from a training camp that is supposed to be the most important 6 weeks of her professional career. Psychology has a name for this. When a person is under overwhelming, unaddressable pressure, pressure they cannot fix quickly, pressure that lives in rooms they cannot walk into, they will sometimes redirect that pressure onto the smallest, most immediate conflict available. The internet stranger. The comment section critic. The random Instagram woman. Because fighting that fight feels controllable. Winning that fight feels satisfying. And the loop is easier than sitting in the discomfort of the actual crisis. That is not a diagnosis. That is a pattern. And on the kindest red, it is what a lot of high performers do when the walls start closing in. On the harshest red, it is a champion refusing to look at the actual scoreboard. Now, before we land the plane, there is one more layer here that nobody is talking about, and it is the layer that ties everything together. Claressa Shields is 31 years old. She is not late career. She is not washed. She is not out of time. She has one of the most accomplished amateur ledgers in the history of American boxing. She still has arguably the most complete skill set in the female middleweight division, and if she chose, right now, today, to disappear from the timeline, tighten the inner circle, quit responding to comments, refocus the training camp, and let the fight speak for itself, she could reset every single conversation you and I are having in this piece within 1 calendar year. That door is still open. That door has not slammed shut. The problem is that every additional post, every additional comment section battle, every additional Papoose defense, every additional sponsorship deck update pushes that door one more inch toward closing. And here is the twist a lot of longtime fight fans are quietly making. Compare her to Amanda Serrano. Compare her to Katie Taylor. Compare her to Alicia Baumgardner. These are not saints. These are not perfect PR operations. These are professional fighters with plenty of internal chaos of their own. But watch how they carry themselves in public. Watch how they treat the comment section. Watch how often they respond to critics. Watch how often you see them in a 5-day-old feud with a stranger named Nicole. You do not, because they treat their public feed like an asset. Claressa Shields, on the harshest red, has been treating hers like a battleground. And every day she treats it like a battleground is another day a brand executive somewhere quietly moves the pencil to a different name. Now, and this is the part one want you to sit with, remember when the original attendance target was more than 20,000 fans at State Farm Arena? Remember when the whole event was marketed as the biggest event of the summer, singular? Watch what happened. 20,000 became 18,000. Biggest event of the summer became one of the biggest events of the summer. Limited sponsorship opportunities became a public solicitation on Instagram 30 days out. Those are not accidental language shifts. Those are recalibrations. Somebody on that team looked at the ticket numbers, looked at the sponsor commitments, looked at the calendar, looked at Raleigh Romero and Teofimo Lopez rising the following week, and quietly turned down the volume on the promises. That is what a soft landing looks like when you cannot deliver the original pitch. And that is what the paper trail is telling us happened here. So here is the read from this seat. This is not, ultimately, a story about Papoose's inbox. Papoose's inbox is the smoke. The fire is a woman who was supposed to be the face of women's boxing entering fight week visibly stretched thin, battling strangers online, chasing sponsors in public, walking back attendance numbers, softening event language, and defending a relationship that half her audience does not believe belongs in the spotlight in the first place. On the harshest red, Claressa Shields is watching her brand recalibrate around her in real time, and instead of solving for it, she is arguing with a woman named Turner Waters about whether Turner Waters is a lunch lady. That is not a training camp. That is a crisis. And it did not have to be this way. That is the tragedy in this whole thing. Because the resume is real. The talent is real. The Olympic golds are real. The championship belts are real. And the door to reset is genuinely still open. But it will not stay open forever. And every hour she spends on the timeline is an hour she is not spending in the gym, in the film room, in the sponsor meetings that actually matter, or in the closed-door conversations with the people who could still salvage this. The clock is not just counting down to August 15th. It is counting down on the trajectory of a career that used to have no ceiling. So here is what I would watch over the next 4 weeks, and this is where I will land it. First, watch the sponsor patches on fight night. Not the promo graphics. The actual walkout kit under actual arena lights. Whichever brands show up on that outfit, those are the ones who signed. Whichever spots are blank or covered, those are the deals that never closed. That is your live read on how the sponsorship pitch actually landed. Second, watch who is standing at ringside. Watch who is in the corner. Watch who is in the crowd shots. Because the inner circle around a fighter tells you everything about the state of the brand. If the faces are the same faces you would have expected 2 years ago, the base is intact. If those faces are gone, if new faces are in those seats, if the corner looks unfamiliar, the signal is louder than any Instagram post. Third, and this is the meta signal, watch what Claressa Shields does the week after the fight. Does she disappear for a month and reset? Or does she come straight back to the timeline the way she has for the last 12 months? Because that answer, on the harshest red, tells you whether the lesson landed. Here is where I landed, folks. One fight does not end a career. One bad news cycle does not end a legacy. Claressa Shields has time. She has talent. She has a resume most fighters would fake a comeback for. But the paper trail on the last 30 days is not the paper trail of a champion locking in, it is the paper trail of a champion under pressure, and pressure without a plan turns into panic real quick. Whatever happens on August 15th inside those ropes, the conversation surrounding Claressa Shields, Papoose, the sponsorship deck, the walk back on the attendance numbers, the fights she is picking online instead of in the ring, that conversation does not end when the bell rings. That conversation is where the next 12 months of her brand actually get decided. That's the read from here. Tell me in the comments, on the harshest read, is Claressa Shields still the face of women's boxing, or has that door already quietly closed behind her? And if you want the part 2 breakdown, where we get into what the fight night walkout actually reveals about who signed, who ghosted, and which brand executives quietly walked away, hit that subscribe button and stick around, because when the bell rings on August 15th, this story is just getting started. Talk to you soon.